Morning all, here we go. It's Friday, February the 17th. Slightly bleak, damp February morning. What better time to go and head off to see the new film from the MCU, from Marvel. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania opens today. I got my ticket booked, I'm ready to go. Gonna grab a bit of breakfast on the way. My thoughts, my hopes for this film. The reviews have been fairly middling to negative. There seem to be lots of good things about it, things that people don't like. My concern, I think, is that I really enjoyed the previous two Ant-Man films. They were good fun, without massive, huge, galaxy-threatening, dramatic stakes. This one, obviously, is exploring the quantum realm, and I will talk a little bit more about various quantum realms and multiverses when I actually review the film and my view on that sort of story element or plot device or whatever. This is clearly going to be a more cosmic, spaced out Ant-Man film, and I'm not expecting to enjoy it as much as the first two, because I enjoyed the lightness of touch of the first two. I liked that sort of comedic touch that they had, which worked in films like Ant-Man because it's essentially Paul Rudd is a comedy actor, and the comedy was well done. My problem with Marvel is when they make straight characters, dramatic characters like Thor, into comic characters. That grates with me a little bit, grinds my gears. So, ultimately, bottom line, I'm looking forward to a good time, but I don't expect to be blown away by this film. But we'll find out after this. Breakfast time. Hello, welcome back. It's now a couple of hours later, Friday night, a very wet, miserable Friday night, incidentally, and I'm back from seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Quite a bit to say. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, and with as few spoilers as I possibly can. This is the third film in Marvel's Ant-Man franchise. I am a big fan of Ant-Man. I think he's a really amusing and interesting character, and I'm really pleased that there's been a third film. I think it was touch and go at some point, because both films, Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, were decent hits. They both pulled in, I think the first one pulled in just over $500 million, second one about 650 billion, so I think it took a bit more. So I'm glad there's a third film, because I think Paul Rudd is a great screen presence, the Scott Lang Ant-Man, with a good supporting cast. The film stars, I'll just run through it, of course, Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van Dyne the Wasp. We've got Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, who was lost in the quantum realm for 30 years. And Catherine Newton takes over the role as Cassie Lang, Scott's daughter that has this sort of slightly up and down relationship with. And of course, introducing Jonathan Waters as Kang, who's going to be the big bad for most of Phase 5 of the MCU. And a lot of people have complained about this film, and I've read a lot of reviews, a lot of comments about it. Newspaper critics, I think you can sort of disregard a lot of their comments because they don't understand this stuff unless it's very linear and very straightforward. They're not really tuned into it. A lot of the magazine and genre critics have been on the fence about it as well. And generally, if you care about Rotten Tomatoes, I think it's on about 50% Rotten Tomatoes at the moment, which apparently is the second lowest ever Rotten Tomatoes rating for a Marvel film. A lot of people have criticised it because it doesn't appear to be an Ant-Man film. The first two films were very light and frothy, often described as palate cleansers after the explosive events of some of the bigger films that preceded them. And that's fine, and that's great. They were good fun. Action adventure films were very low stakes. They were sort of superhero films that relied on the visual trickery of Ant-Man, Giant Man, things shrinking, things expanding, and a lot of humour that came from that. I think if we'd had a third Ant-Man film which ploughed the same furrow, being fairly lightweight, nice, but inessential, people would have complained, oh, what's the point of doing Ant-Man films? They're just exactly the same every time. But what they've done with this film, which launches, incidentally, Phase 5, is go big. And I think that's a good thing to do because it shakes things up a little bit. It shows that there is a lot of potential for different types of Ant-Man stories. He isn't just this low-level character who has low-level adventures. And I see no reason why he can't be thrust into something bigger, bearing in mind he is an Avenger. He was part of Endgame. He has become a major player at a time when the MCU has, of course, lost a lot of its major players. So I think to criticise it for being huge and big and weird is a false flag in a way, because I think, why not? Because otherwise you're just making the same film over and over again. Ant-Man and the Wasp, as good as it is, was in a natural sequel to the original Ant-Man, but it didn't break any new ground. And this breaks new ground certainly for the Ant-Man franchise. It makes him much bigger and much more important because he's there at the beginning of the Kang arc. So the story, of course, you'll have read other reviews that told you the story. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. Scott Lang is a bit of a New York celebrity. He's written his life story. All those comedic beats that you expect from the Ant-Man films, they're there in the first 10-50 minutes. That's great fun. At a family dinner, his daughter Cassie, who is also a bit of a scientist, reveals that she's created a device which can open a gateway or send messages and can investigate the quantum realm, if you like, which is that mysterious other world that Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Janet, was in for so long. But something goes wrong with the technology and they all get sucked into the quantum realm, and they discover the quantum realm is actually more than just lots of weird shapes and strange things going on. There are whole civilizations down there, weird civilizations, alien creatures, strange, bizarre things from your worst nightmare, and silly things. And it turns out that this domain is now being dominated by Kang, the monstrous Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors, who is this despot who's been banished from his own dimension because he is so terrible and so evil. He makes Thanos look like a playground bully. And it's hard to really describe the visual look of this film because it is huge. It genuinely is huge. You think of the big SFX films we've had in the last few years, the Star Wars films, a lot of the previous Marvel films. And this, I think, sort of tops it in terms of its ambition. It's really huge in terms of the landscapes and cityscapes and peculiar creatures that roam this realm. Battle scenes full of armies. I mean, visually it is stunning. I think that I couldn't personally fault the visual effects. I thought it was all superb. And I'm going to give a special thumbs up to MODOK, incidentally, who is one of Marvel Comics' more extreme characters, who's reinvented here quite wittily as one of the comic characters, but with quite a vicious turn to him. It's not the MODOK of the comics, so if you're a fan of MODOK of the comics, that's not the MODOK that we get here. But it's very clever, and it's just interesting, and it's fun to see that they've actually done something with this character on the big screen, and I think it works really well. And I thought the whole film worked really well. I went in, as I said in my introduction, my expectations were lowered because I've read a lot of the negative comments, and I should know better. I should think, well, I'll make up my own mind. I won't be influenced. But you can't help thinking, if there is a sort of a critical, not exactly backlash, but if a lot of the critics are a bit iffy, you sort of think, well, there must be something to it. But I think the problem is, if you go in expecting an ordinary Ant-Man film, you're not getting that. You're getting this completely way out sci-fi film full of these bizarre creatures and concepts. And it is quite hardcore, weird, psychedelic sci-fi, massively vibrant colour. I mean, it just looks absolutely stunning if you go to see it. Watch it on a big screen, the biggest screen you can, because it looks fantastic. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I was sort of prepared to go in and think, yeah. I mean, there was one point, I think, when they got to the quantum realm and they're wandering around for a little bit, but there's the first sort of battle sequence, I think I started to drift away from it a little bit. I thought this is, and it is massive CGI. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The film could not exist without the magic of CGI. So if you're tired of CGI overload, this will tire you even more. But the story pulled me back in again, mainly due to Jonathan Major's performance as Kang, which is so compelling. Plus, I like Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. I think he's good. I think the character and family stuff is well played out. There is, interestingly, a coming of age sort of thing with Cassie's character stepping up to the plate and learning to be the superhero that she can be as well. There's a lot going on, and I think it may be visual overload for a lot of people who maybe like things a bit more linear and a bit more straightforward and a bit more typical early Marvel, if you like. And I think that's a problem that is going to confound the film for a lot of people. I think a lot of people come away not liking it, but without realising why they haven't liked it, if you see what I mean. They haven't appreciated that it's something different. It is too different. Possibly it's too different for a lot of people. But I went along with it, and I felt that there's a noticeable lack of humour compared to the previous ones. It's witty. They would say the first 10-15 minutes very funny, and you get bits of humour that do keep appearing throughout. But this is a more serious story that's going to have bigger consequences for the MCU going forward, and I respect that. And I just enjoyed it a lot. I had a really good time with it. But I know a lot of people won't, and you watching it thinking this is so far from what people expect from Ant-Man that it'll baffle people. And you can't help thinking back to the early days of the MCU when we had the big hitters establish themselves: Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Avengers, that whole thing, which was so new and vibrant and exciting and grounded. This isn't grounded at all. I must admit that, I like the appeal of superheroes for me are ordinary people who have extraordinary abilities in the real world and dealing with real world problems as well as their superhero problems. There isn't any of that here because it is so extreme. In this other dimension, this other realm that doesn't exist. But in the MCU, it's just insane. So it's not a grounded film, and it does distance you a lot from the humanity of the characters most of the time. But Ant-Man, the Wasp, who Evangeline Lilly doesn't get a lot to do, to be honest, Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, they still are interesting characters because we've met them before and we know them. That lifts them through the absurdities of the plot. So ultimately, I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was really good. I thought the last 20 minutes or so was particularly intense. There are two post-credit sequences which tie into the whole multiverse thing and move that forward a little bit. I obviously won't spoil those here. So yeah, I think it's not one of the great Marvel films. It's not one that would feature in anybody's top 10, but certainly is. For me, looking at the films that Marvel had recently, I enjoyed this far more than Thor: Love and Thunder. I enjoyed this far more than Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Certainly the best Marvel title for me since Spider-Man: Far From Home. No Way Home? No Way Home. I just enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I love Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. I enjoyed Shang-Chi. But this, because the ambition of it just really impressed me. I just had a better time with it than I thought I would. A lot of people saying about the Marvel magic is gone. And I think there's a lot of issues at the moment with the amount of content they're putting out. They're certainly putting out too much. I understand that's being considered and dealt with at the moment. So we're going to get less Marvel. And that's fine as long as it's all good Marvel. There's a whole issue about the quality control of Phase 4. Some of the films that didn't work as well, as some of the TV didn't work as well. Because there's been a lot of stuff that they brought out. But I think Phase 5 has kicked off in quite strong form. And I just had a good time with it. You may disagree, you may think it was a pile of old ant droppings, but I just had a good time. 2 hours, clipped along. Apart from that one scene where I just drifted a bit because I hadn't quite attuned to the CGI-ness of it all. But I think if you see it, you'll have a good time. If you do see it, here's the thing, good idea. You could leave a comment down below to tell me what you thought of it. Do you think it was rubbish? Do you think it was a good film, a great film? I say not a great Marvel film, probably not the most shamelessly enjoyable Ant-Man film, but it certainly doesn't disgrace the other two. And I do admire and appreciate the fact they went onto the limb and did something different and didn't just repeat the beats of the previous two films. And I think that's important, that a film, a character, a series doesn't just cool its heels and tread ground. It tries to do something different. Whether it works or not, of course, it's down to you. So, anyway, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in cinemas now. I'm going to give it 7.5 out of 10. Verging towards an 8. Not a bad film. If you think of things like Eternals, how terrible that was, and how drab Captain Marvel was, this is leagues ahead of those for me. I had a good time with it. So Marvel kicks off Phase 5, for me at least, in style. Right, thank you for watching. As I said, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of the film. And you can also subscribe. That would be great. You don't even have to watch any more of the videos. Just subscribe to get me subscriber numbers up. That would be nice. Leave a comment. Like, subscribe, tell your friends and all that sort of stuff. I'll leave you to your own devices now. And I'll say until I see you next time, keep taking the stuff.